All right, so I think we are live now. Yes, so we are already live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on whatever time zone you are in. My name is Faizan Ali, an assistant professor from School of Hospitality and Tourism Management and a research coordinator for M3 Center for Innovation and Hospitality and Tourism from University of South Florida. And today we have a very distinguished speaker, Professor Aminul Islam from the School of Business Innovation and Technopreneurship, which I really like the name. I think it's a very interesting and unique name, University Malaysia Perlis. And Professor Amin is very well published, and he is also award-winning researcher, working and serving on multiple editorial boards. And then he is a regular speaker on research methods and mainly literature review and systematic literature review and topics around this area. So thank you so much, Professor Amin, for accepting my invitation to be on the channel today and talk about systematic literature review. Before I head and hand over the presentation more to you, I also want to introduce Dr. Siddhan Dogan, who is a very close friend of mine and a very uprising and promising researcher. So Professor Dr. Siddhan will today help me with managing the stream and looking into the questions and everything else. So thank you, Siddhan, for accepting the invitation and being here. All right, having said that, we are live on YouTube, and I tried to stream it on Facebook. It was not happening. So for YouTube, if you have any questions, please make sure that you put your questions into the chat instead of the comment section on YouTube. And that way, if you have any questions, we can put them on the screen so that, Professor Amin can see the questions clearly and all the other people can also see them. Thank you very much again, Professor Amin, and I will hand over the presentation to you. You can start now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Faizan Ali. Assalamu alaikum. Very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. As I understood, participants of this webinar would be from various parts of the world. And I think I have listened to a few videos of Dr. Faizan Ali, whereby he used to always say good morning, afternoon, and evening. Very common. All right. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Faizan Ali for inviting me to this webinar. And I would like to also extend my appreciation to University of South Florida, UTHM Student Association, and my university for the collaboration with Dr. Faizan Ali, as well as the one of the premium YouTube channel on research methodology, the ResearchBeast. And finally, I would like to welcome you all, the participants, viewers from different parts of the world to this webinar. The topic given to me is systematic literature review, which this is the 7th webinar that I'm conducting today in 3 months. So I have done already 6 on the same topic so far in 3 months, and this is the 7th one. And I still see a lot of requests from different parts of the world about literature review, systematic literature review, or critical literature review. My email address is there, as well as I put my WhatsApp number in case anyone would like to communicate with me on any issues relating to research methods or research methodology. So this is how am I going to start. The more we know about our topic, the more effectively we can tackle our research problem. And it all starts with literature review. We start our research journey with a topic in mind, and then we look into a problem in hand, a problem that somehow troubles the industry or academic area. We take them on and we undertake or pursue a research. So when we take on, finally define a research problem, first of all, we need to know exactly what is happening. And if that problem persists still, and before the problem was there, how people adjust to that problem, what kind of solutions, outcomes were there, All those need to be understood. And I always give a simple example. When we go and meet a doctor, when we feel unhealthy, the doctor at the beginning will start asking questions. And those questions are basically a part of literature review. We do not realize that actually the doctor is doing a literature review, understanding my health status and why I'm feeling unhealthy, what could be the root causes and all that. Finally, he will define the problem and he will give the medication. So that's the systematic literature review is all about. We will be finding a problem, then we will define and refine the problem with the help of literature review, and then finally we will try to work on certain methodology and find out some outcomes or solution to it. So this is how important the literature review is. The topic that we have in mind or the research problem that we have in mind, we have to define it correctly with the help of a good systematic literature review. Now, there are many misunderstandings and misconceptions about literature review. Many researchers think that summarizing papers and describing them is literature review. Many think that reviewing, comparing, and contrasting of findings is literature review. And there is a belief that there's no relevance of theories in literature review. When I meet students, when you review papers, we see all that happening. Okay, we tend to forget the premise or the context of research, which is very important. It is understood and agreeable that knowledge is universal. So the knowledge that we believe and understand and apply in US or UK or different parts of the world, the principle is universal. But when you apply, it is different. We have to look at the premise and the context of research. Same goes to like a doctor when he prescribes a medicine. The dose is different based on the patient. Younger patient, middle-aged patient, older patient, the doses are different. So same goes to the research. The knowledge is true, is universal, but when it comes to application, we have to look at the premise and context of research. That's what is missing. We found them missing in most of the literature review section in a paper or in a PhD dissertation draft that we read. And what is very important is writers or authors tend to forget that he has to state his own understanding, and he must have some inferences on the review or the readings of papers that he has undertaken. There must be a conclusion from the author himself based on his reading. That what makes it critical. That what makes it critical. A literature review definitely a systematic process, but at the end, it must be critical. At the same time, must be balanced. So the balancing work is usually done when we take care of premise and context of research, and when we conclude on a topic based on our understanding, and we put our own inferences based on our reading. Now, let me start with simple topics because I have taken it as if like there are participants who are doing masters by research, undertaking PhD now in different levels, and they are also academics. In Malaysia, when I conduct webinars, I do see many professors elder than me used to attend the webinars. So I have to take care of all participants. So I will start from very beginning, and then slowly I'll move into deeper and complex issues. And finally, I'm going to propose a template, which is created by me. And it seems being appreciated by researchers worldwide. So stay until the end of the session. I'm going to explain you the template that I have prepared for you. A research, the definition of research are many, but the most, the better one that I always liked, research is a journey. When we plan to travel, we simply do not just wake up and start driving the car, right? If you are going far, at night we'll be packing our luggage and baggage, and we'll be looking at what are the papers, the dresses that I need, what are the medication I have to take with me. That's what we do before even we start the journey. So research is a journey. Before we started research, before even we undertake a research, we have to plan for it. So you have to pack your luggage. That's where you're thinking of a topic, you're thinking of a research problem, you're refining the research problem before even kick off undertaking a research. And then when you start the journey, when you travel, on the way to travel, sometimes we speed up, we drive faster, sometimes we slow down. And on the way, we see accidents happening, people are dying. Sometimes we stop for natural purposes. Sometimes we stop for food and drinks and all that. All that happens during the journey. And sometimes when you fall in a terrible traffic jam and you get a deadlock, you feel like I want to go back, but there's no way you can go back. You are inside, you are in the traffic jam. So you have to wait until you get it clear and you have to proceed further. So that's how I define research. Those of us, we have completed PhD, we know how difficult the journey was. And I'm very sure that those of you who are with me, completed PhD or doing PhD now, there are certain point we always think of quitting. Myself, I thought of quitting 2-3 times. Even once my wife was very firm. I've decided that I want to stop and go back to my country, not continue to do PhD. My wife said, no, you came here to complete your PhD, so there's no way you are going back. You have to complete the PhD. So that's how the journey is, So that's how I relate PhD or any research that you undertake. I compare with is a journey, a voice of discovery. So it's full of challenges, barriers, full of hindrances, full of enthusiasm, motivation, and many inspiration, negative, positive together. So at the end, when you finish, when you reach your destination, after a travel, it doesn't mean your life ends there, right? It doesn't. You just finish one job, one task. Research is like that. When you finish your PhD, it doesn't mean that's the end of your life. Actually, that is the beginning of your research life. It's a lifelong learning. So when you finish your PhD or when you complete research, by right, you should be doing more and more research. Like when we go and travel to a place and we like the place, and then we come back home, and then after 1 month, we plan again to go and see other places, right? That's how life goes on. Research is like that. Once you complete a research, that doesn't mean that I have completed my research life, right? So after we complete, then we publish the paper, we'll be thinking of taking some more research undertakings. That's how research is. The rest, I'm not going to read for you because I'm very sure most of you are familiar with the definition of that. Now, this is a bookish definition of research, which I like. It's a research is an organized, objective, systematic process to study a particular problem that needs a solution. So the most important part of this definition is the problem that needs a solution. If there's no problem, there's no research. There must be a problem identified. And when we read PhD thesis, especially as internal or external examiner or the chairman of the session, that's where we drill the student. What is your research problem? And most of the cases, you'll find the students are very poor in writing this part of the thesis. This is one of the difficult part of a thesis or dissertation, or even if you are publishing a paper in well-reputed established journals. The research problem, not highlighted enough, not shine enough, so people can't really see. It's not visible for people to see the kind of problem that we address in a research. Because at the end of the paper, there must be some kind of solution to the problem. So if the problem is not defined correctly, then definitely we'll have a problem in terms of outcome that we get. But again, the other parts of the definition is research must be organized, objective, and systematic process. So that's the topic for today, right? Systematic literature review. When you do literature review, even it has to be systematic, the part of the definition. What is research? Again, some other simple definitions are there. Research, searching again, searching for new ideas, searching for new answers to the old question. You're questioning the existing answers of a question and search for new answers. I want to more focus on why we do research. Because social realities evolve and change. The way we work, the way we lead our personal life, family life, our country, the way we lead our life in the country, the way we work, we mingle around with people, keep changing. The way we used to eat 5 years before, we don't eat the same way. The way we used to dress up 5 years or 10 years before, we don't dress up the same way. The way we used to lead our life before COVID-19, we don't live in the same way now. And after COVID, possibly again, we'll have the similar situation. The new normal may continue for some time, few years. So life has changed. So even though we have answers for certain questions, but those questions, the answers are contestable because of the changes in society, social things. And then ideas will evolve and change. The ideas that seem to be very effective today, it may not be effective after 6 months, right? With fourth industrial revolution, the sort of changes that we see in the industry, automation, digitalization, and all that taking place in faster pace, and that definitely requires a lot of new research to be done to cope up with the changes taking place. And definitely all the solutions we have are contestable. The disease that is affecting millions of people worldwide and people are dying, we have medications for it, but still people are dying. This medication could be effective for some people, may not be effective for some people. So same goes to research. Even though millions of people are undertaking research now, undertaken research before and now, still we need more research because of the changes taking place in the society. In a very simple word, we call it now the hyper-turbulent environment. Things are changing too fast and too much. So new researches are definitely warranted. I would like to also address some misunderstanding on research. Many researchers, when they write a paper, they will just collect facts and figures and information, and they just describe them and they think they have done a research. That is not a research. Research is done with very specific purpose and objectives. So if there is no specific purpose of collecting data and facts, then it is not a research. And many times we read, when we review papers, we see reassembling and reordering facts and information without interpretation. So we just collect information from various parts of various literature, various papers, and we reassemble them, we reorder them, and then we just present them without interpretation, and we think it is a research. It is not. That's where we see a lot of weaknesses among the authors or the students, research students. I will discuss more about it later. Number 3 is an esoteric activity with no or little relevance to everybody's life. If we undertake a research that benefits very few people, then it is not really research. Research should be done for in a way so that many people get benefited from it. Okay, so if you are doing a research that benefits only me and 2, 3, 5 people, then it is not a research. Okay, that's not. And then when we do also try to promote our product and ideas through social media or any other platform, and we think that I'm doing a research, that is not. It's just an advertisement. It is not a research. So there are few areas of misunderstanding of research that I thought should be highlighted and explained. There are many examples like that available for us for discussion. Now, when it comes to a research, these are the components of a research, which is well understood. We start with the research topic, then we go at this define research problem, refine research problem. We translate research problem into research question and objectives. That's basically the setting the tone of research, right? As I always say, research is basically telling and selling a story. So you are telling your story and then you want to sell it. So you have to write it in a way so that people buy it. That's what it is, selling it. So you have a plot. You must have a plot in research. That is research problem. So when we research, when we watch a movie, either Hollywood or Bollywood, whatever movies that you like, the first beginning 15 minutes, 20 minutes is basically creating the story line, the plot of the movie. If you like it, you will continue watching it. If you don't like it, you will not continue watching that movie. Same goes to the research. At the beginning, you have to set your plot, the storyline. And that storyline is the research problem. But again, to define and refine research problem, we start with literature review. Okay, so literature review is the most important one because that helps you to see how people have done research before, their findings, the method of doing it, the way of data analysis and all that. That helps you to fine tune your research problem and fine tune the plot that you would like to create for your research. And that's why many students will come and ask me, Prof, which chapter should I write first, chapter 1 or chapter 2 for PhD or master by research student? Chapter 1 is introduction, chapter 2 is literature review. Which one should I write? And my obvious answer would be always literature review. Before completing literature review, how can you write chapter 1, literature, the research problem? You have to identify research gap. That is the theory. And then you have to look at the context where the research problem comes from, the root of the problem. And that all can be deduced through a proper systematic literature review. So I will always advise or recommend students write chapter 2 first, literature review, and then only after that you write chapter 1, introduction, research problem, and all that. So the importance of literature review can be understood here. The first step of doing a research is basically literature review, and this will put the foundation or lay the foundation for the subsequent steps of research. If we do a poor job here, our whole research process, the whole research report will suffer. Now, this is again the similar kind of thing that I don't want to discuss. This is conceptualizing a research study, start with the topic and purpose, question, objectives, all that. I would like to skip this slide. This is important. This is what I have taken from social media. Supervisors and examiners' expectation from a PhD research. Examiners want you to have a tree that give you oranges, apples, bananas, and all that. How can you get that? How can you get that? Possibly, if we want an apple tree giving more fruits, or the apple size is bigger, is acceptable, is possible. But if somebody wants you to give them a tree that gives you oranges, apples, and bananas and all that, that is impossible. Okay, so we got to balance it up. But again, I'm going to discuss more on this. This is something new that I thought about. I think I'm the first one talking about it. That's why I put at the beneath of the slide, concept developed by myself. I put my name there. And I'm writing a paper on this, the tree analogy in research. I'm writing a paper on it. I'm comparing research with a tree. A research is a tree. Take it like research is a tree. So the research problem should become from the root of it. All right. A tree, whether going to be strong or not, it depends on the root of the tree. The kind of fruits that you are going to get, it depends on the roots of the tree. And when you see a strong tree is dying, you always see the leaves are falling. Again, we will try to see there must be a problem at the root of the tree. When there is a strong wind, if the root is strong, the tree will stand. If the root is strong, then it's even a weak storm or wind will make it fall. So that's why I call it a research problem. The research problem I compare with the root of a tree. If your research problem is not identified and defined properly, then the root of research, the root of the tree already weak. The whole research process will suffer. The outcome will suffer. The fruits that we get from a tree is dependent on the kind of roots, the fertilizers and all that we have. So if you have a problem of watering, fertilization, problem with the soil quality and all that, the tree suffers. Same goes to the research problem. If research problem you are not correctly identified and define the research problem, the whole research project will suffer. That is research problem. So once you have identified that, I put the leaves of a tree, I compare it with literature review. The beautification of a tree is dependent on how the tree looks like. It's the leaves. Okay, so the tree that has greener leaves, more leaves or bigger leaves, looks more beautiful, you know. More colorful leaves, looks more beautiful. The more leaves, more beautiful. And also, we cannot forget that the leaves play very important role in carbon dioxide emission, right, at night. So that's very important. So this is literature review. That's where I'm in now. And today's webinar is all about the lips, the beautification of our research. The lifeline of research is dependent on literature review. Okay, and then I'm comparing the underpinning theories with the branches of a tree. Literature reviews should be connected with theories. We identify constructs or variables. Those variables should come from theories. And that's what I have said in my first slide. One of the misunderstandings of many researchers, many students will come and ask me, sir, I have read many papers, but I cannot find any theory. I said, that is impossible. If you want to identify variables, that must be supported by a theory. So I'm putting theories as underpinning theories at the branches of the tree. So those theories will be connecting your literature review, right? Literature review are connected or deduced through underpinning theories. And I'm comparing the tree body with a theoretical framework. Because in your research, theoretical framework is the nucleus of research. If your tree body is strong, then definitely you're supposed to have more branches and more fruits. The tree that has a weaker body may not be able to carry the bigger size of fruits or more fruits of the tree. So that's what I put a theoretical framework. The way we identify variables, be it independent variables or moderating variables or mediating variables, or it could be even antecedents or outcome variable. There are many kinds of variables available. The framework that we create with the help of that is theoretical framework. And if it is qualitative research, that will be conceptual framework that makes our research stronger. All right. So the body of research, theoretical framework. And then the quality of data and robustness of analysis, I put it as watering and fertilizing. I'm comparing with water, fertilizer, soil quality with the data quality and robustness of analysis. When the doctor identifies your disease, he goes through certain tests depending on kind of health problem that we have. Same goes to a tree. When the tree suffers, if you want to find out what is wrong with the tree, definitely we will going back to the root of the tree. It could be because of the lack of water, because of the proper fertilization. It could be because too solid soil, or the quality of soil is not good. I know there are many things there that we look at. So that's where we look at data quality and robustness of analysis. I compare with that. And finally, every research will have outcomes, and we will call it as our contribution. I compare that with the fruits of a tree. So that's what is very important. At the end of it, a tree is known for its fruits, right? If you have a big tree but no fruits, there's no use of it. Possibly it just helps you in environmental, all that. But the reason you plant a tree, we'd love to get some fruits. Now, what kind of fruits would you like? If you plant a tree and get similar kind of fruits that others are getting, then you've got no contribution. So you may have the same tree, but your tree produces volume, more fruits than you have contribution there. Or the fruits that your tree produce is size bigger than the normal size of other trees, then that is your contribution. So that's what is expected from a research. Because the research we do, hundreds of people or thousands of people have already done it. So people will question, what is new? What is new? Why did you do this research? Many people have done it before. Then you have to show them, no, this is what I found. I have any variable, independent variable. I have tested a new moderating variable. I've tested the mediating variable. I have introduced control variable. I have introduced outcome variable, antecedents. You have to have something new there in a research, be it a PhD or master thesis, or be it a paper that we write based on research. There must be some contribution, and that makes it original, right? Originality of research comes from there, the contribution of your research. Now, let me proceed on to the topic slowly now. What is literature review? Basically, in a simple term, we call it as if works that we consult. So in a review of literature, we try to see what people have done before. We try to understand them. and then we try to relate it with our research problem. This is a very simple definition. But more precise definition is this one, which I like a lot. Jim Olhoff, in his book on how to write a literature review, he put 5 questions there. What do researchers know? What do they not know? What has been researched? What has not been researched? Is the research reliable and trustworthy? What are the gaps in the research knowledge? And he is saying, when we compile answers of these 5 questions together, then we have a literature review. It's a very comprehensive definition. So we are looking at what you know, or researchers know, what they do not know. That gives you the gap of research, right? And then what has been done, what has not been done, that gives you the room to do new research. The gap is identified, right? So, and then again, in social science research, especially, even in science and engineering, there's a lot of rooms for unethical and unprofessional practices. So we have to be careful in reviewing the paper to make sure the findings that we see, the methodology used are reliable, trustworthy. Findings presented are really trustworthy and reliable. I have met with many PhD students. They come to see me with the data, having problem with SPSS and PLS. And I caught many of them for not having correct data. Those of you are very good in SPSS, you know, looking at the output, we know that the student did not distribute the question. We know certain cases. There was a student actually traveled from outside Malaysia just to see me because his data cannot be exported to PLS. And he told me that he has gone to many people and nobody could help him. So finally, he got to know me. He bought the ticket. I do not want to mention the country to safeguard his identity and confidentiality. So he came to see me, traveling from another country. So he came to my office. I said, okay, you open the data. And I tried to export it to PLS. I couldn't. So I said, okay, let me look at your data. Then you know what I identified? I found out his question 6 to 11 responses are similar to question 11 to 15. So I asked him, did you really distribute the questionnaire? He looked at me and asked me, Prof, why did you ask me that question? I said, I have a reason to ask you. Did you really distribute the questionnaires? So then he looked at my face. So I said, basically, you did not distribute questionnaires. You just copied and pasted. You have created few items, answers, and you have copied and pasted in a way so that people cannot understand. But the softwares are very smart, you know. That's how we call it the smart PLS. Even the PLS does not allow that kind of data to be exported to PLS. Okay. So when you read a paper, we have to be very careful on the quality of journal, the quality of the findings that we see and all that, to make sure it is reliable and trustworthy. And this is another author, Isaac Asimov. He says, from his close observation, he categorized researchers or writers into 2. First group, he said, those who bleed copiously and visibly at any bad review, and those who bleed copiously and secretly at any bad review. So what he's trying to say, basically most of the reviews that he has closely gone through, none of the reviews are actually appropriate or adequate. There are shortfalls in most of the literature reviews that he has read, all right? And I think those of us connected to journals and review a lot of papers and supervise a lot of students, it's always the case. We'll always tell the student, it's not adequate yet. You have to read more papers, more latest papers and more recent papers. All sort of comments we'll always give to the students. Okay, this is the topic given by Dr. Faizan Ali to me, systematic literature review. I'm moving to that. It is basically, we say it is a review of a clearly formulated questions that use a systematic and explicit message to identify, select, and critically appraise relevant research, collect and analyze data from studies that could be useful in our research. Okay, so there is a systematic step-by-step process, which I'm going to explain again. So in a broad or comprehensive way, there are two steps in doing that. First step is to conduct systematic review to create a structured question to guide the review. And second step is to perform a thorough search of literature for relevant papers. Now, this is the most difficult question that every student will face, as we faced it before. The hardest part is getting started. Where to start? Many students will come and tell me, I have read 10 papers, but I don't know how to write. Where to start? What to write? Some even will come and tell me, I have read 40 papers or 50 papers, Prof, but I do not know what to write. Where to start? Where to start? That question is very hard to answer even. But again, I have created a template to make that one bit easier, which I'm going to share you at the end of my talk. Through my supervision of a student and reading papers and all that, I think the challenges that we have is to convert ideas into concepts. I think there is a video given by Dr. Faizan Ali in his YouTube channel also. And I do see many other videos on the ideas, how to convert ideas into concepts. This is the bigger challenges among the researchers that we have. So we have to identify the quality sources of quality information with highest value will bring highest benefits and outcomes. Okay, so that is a challenge that we have, sources of quality information. So I'm going to explain a bit more later. But in the next slide, let me show you some of the sources of information or some of the steps where we can actually convert an idea to a concept. We start with intuition. Intuition is our conscious, subconscious thinking, our belief, our perception. When we thought of conducting a research, that's what we start, right? Based on intuition. I like this topic, I like this area, so I want to do a research on this. Many times students will come with topics and tell us, Prof, can I do a research on it? I will tell them, no, this is not researchable. Many times a student will come based on his intuition. He'll propose a topic and I'll say, hey, by doing a PhD, you are not going to change the world. You are not going to do a research. So you got to tone down a bit, you know. So that's come from intuition. So the idea that we have, definitely from intuition. The way we have been brought up, our family life, our education life, our social life, our mingling with the friends and colleagues and all that will make up certain kind of intuition in us. It could be conscious, subconscious, and that gives us a clue of coming out with new ideas. But again, my friends, brothers and sisters, we have to always remember not all ideas are workable, not all ideas are good ideas. Okay, so some ideas seems to be very good to me, but it's not researchable. The ideas got to be researchable. So to make ideas researchable, we have to follow the next 3 steps. Okay, so one is experience. You have to consult with people who has gone through similar experience before. So students will consult with professors, researchers, his colleagues, his friends, and many industry experts and all that to get some kind of feeling on the topic that he feels he would like to carry on a research. So that gives him some ideas. How can he convert the ideas into concept, right? And then he can do little research, reading some papers, preliminary papers, looking at some company annual reports and all that may also help him to convert, refine the ideas and make it concept. Or he can even consult with people with authority. Some people are definitely expert in certain area, so we may have to consult with them. So these 4 steps basically are very important for researcher preliminary, right at the beginning, to see whether his ideas, the research idea he has, is researchable or not, is something doable or not, is something relevant or not, is something going to be useful for the society or industry or not, is something going to be beneficial for the academic world or not. So that's how the 4 steps will help you. So next few slides are basically elaboration of it. So I'm not going to go through that. I'm going to skip those. So now, why do we review literature? These are the few important points that we got to understand. I think it's very simple words that I put on the slides. We conduct a preliminary research for existing material. Then we organize valuable ideas and findings. We identify other research that may be in progress. We generate research ideas. We develop critical perspective. So literature review got to be critical, right? So we have to establish a critical perspective. So I'm going to have more discussion on it after that in the subsequent slides. So these are the few easier reasons, that we look at to review literature. This is another slide, basically also answering the question why literature review, because we get ideas and we identify gaps. We get an overview of the area of research. We get a feeling of what is doable and what's worthwhile. We avoid reinventing the wheel. We do not want to do the same thing that people have done before, right? Without any modification and all that, or something new. We like to understand our research better. My earlier slide was that, right? We are reviewing literature because we like to understand our research. Now, this is another slide why we do literature review. Literature review, we say, is essential because it provides you an up-to-date understanding of a subject. And for PhD student or master student, we always tell them 40% of your references should be from the latest 5 years. 40%, at least 40%. Key papers could be long time before papers is acceptable, but again, it has to be mostly recent papers. The more, the better. All right, because even when you look at doctors talking to us when we have unhealthy status of our health, they'll be always looking at the recent one, not the past one. They will discuss about us as about the past, but again, focus would be on the recent. So when you do literature review, make sure you focus on the recent papers published, okay, recent research works. We identify kind of research method have been used. There are many different kind of research methods and not suitable for all areas. For certain research, a quantitative method could be just nice. For certain research, could be qualitative. But again, qualitative, you got so many different kind of methods available, right? In-depth interview, focus group, projective techniques. You have triangulation, whereby we integrate a qualitative, quantitative. That's what I do recommend a lot. Even though I'm a quantitative person, but still, beside quantitative, I would like to have a part of qualitative to back up and validate the findings that I have based on quantitative, okay? So we look at past researches and see whether even in terms of research method, I can do something new. Like, for example, I supervised one PhD student, and he did his PhD research completely based on content analysis, right? Now, a lot of research being done using content analysis is a sort of new focus research now. Then we look at the views and research of experts in the field. It also assists in formulation of research topic, question, direction. It definitely provides the basis for subsequent findings, which we are going to compare and contrast later. So when do you start writing or drafting? Okay, at the beginning I put a red question, big question on when to start, the hardest part to start, right? Finding papers and all that. Now, when do you start writing or drafting? So that's a difficult question again, right? When do you start writing? I personally recommend students that when you finish reading about 10 papers, you should already start writing. Write whatever you can write. Sometimes it may not make sense at all, but keep writing. Start writing. There is a beginning of everything, so you have to begin. You have to start. And as it goes on, you'll find ways to improve it. Same goes like when we have learned driving a car. First time we sat down on the seat and we touched the wheel. We know how the feeling was. We press the accelerator and we are just scared the car is going to move faster, right? So we try to press on the accelerator, we try to press on the brake and all that. Writing is like that. You accelerate and then you stop. You place your leg on the accelerator, you place on leg on the brakes. That's how it works. So you have to start somewhere. So I recommend you have to start once you read about 10 to 15 papers. You start writing from the beginning, and then slowly you will improve on. This is a process proposed by Saunders. Saunders Business Research Method books. This is available. Which I like a lot. It's a very nice way of presenting how a literature review should be taken place, a literature review process. So it starts with research questions and objectives. Research questions and objectives are the translation of research problem. I think we understand that very well. Research problem is being broken down into research questions and objectives. So based on research question objectives, we define parameters, and then we generate and refine keywords. We'll conduct research, we obtain papers, we evaluate them, we record them. And after the first cycle, you can see even Saunders is recommending that after the first round, he start drafting the review. So he's starting us to write. Okay. So in first round, if you found 10 papers, you read, you draft, you start drafting the review. Then you continue. We redefine, after reading a few papers, we redefine parameters, we generate and redefine the keywords, we conduct search, obtain papers, evaluate them, record them. And we update and revise draft. That's what I was saying. You start writing. And then after reading few papers, again, you update and revise the draft. And this process continues. The more you read, the more refined your draft is. Okay? Your thinking, your understanding, your control over the area will improve by reading more and more papers. So that will help you to fine tune. And then once you start writing, will start changing, updating, and upgrading, editing, and all that. That makes your literature review better. So this is a common process which is very good, suggested by Saunders et al. I think most of us used to be like that. When we said you have to read 40 papers or 50 papers or 100 papers, because in PhD, in reference list, it's expected to minimum 200 papers to be in the list, right? In masters by the research, we expect in reference list minimum 100 papers. So once we start reading, you read first paper and you go to the next, you will forget what you have read in the first paper. And then when you read the third paper, you'll forget what you have read in the first two papers. And the more you read, the more you are confused. Okay. So this is the kind of situation we'll be wondering, what should I do now? And I think many of you know the level of knowledge. A person who knows very little knowledge, how can you identify him? He will be a big mouth. He will talk a lot. He will show off like he knows a lot. Actually, he just entered in the level 1 of knowledge. Okay? Because he learned a bit and he wants to show it to the people that I learned a lot. I know something, but you do not know. Huh? He wants to show off. When a person moves to the next level, he will develop a feeling like, oh yeah, I know something, but there are many more things to learn. So when people talk like, yeah, I am familiar, but I think I'm not an expert in this area, I got to learn more, he is at the second level. And when a person reaches at the top level of knowledge, he will feel like, I do not know anything. I do not know anything. There's so much to know. There's so much to learn. Right? And that's what Newton says, right? He says, I am playing with sands in the sea of knowledge of sea, right? In the knowledge of sea. That's Newton, right? Newton and Einstein. I think Newton, right? He says he's playing with sands in the sea of knowledge. So he is perceived to be the greatest scientist, and he says he's just playing with the sands in the sea of knowledge. So what are we then? Okay. So when we start doing literature review, that's kind of situation that we will be. We read more and we get more confused. This is normal. If you do not get confused by reading papers, then you are not really reading papers. The more confused you are, meaning you are more carefully reading and understanding the papers. Okay, that's how I feel. All right. So searching strategy, I think I have shown Saunders et al. I don't explain this. This is another one based on Gall et al. You say the purpose of doing a critical literature review is basically to further refine research question objectives, to discover recommendation for further research, to avoid repeating works already undertaken, to provide insight into strategies and techniques appropriate for research objectives. I would like to mention something here. The research final Viva Voce that I attend, I think almost 80 to 90% students will claim, I am the first one in my country doing this research. And we'll always tell the student, please don't say that. Because when you have started doing your research, maybe you are the first one. But your PhD journey was 3 to 4 years to 5 years. By this way, there many people may have started and may have completed research before you. So how do you know you are the first one? So to avoid repeating works already undertaken, and that's why we emphasize a lot on reading recent papers to make sure you are not really repeating, or maybe somebody has already done it, what you are doing now. So you got to be very careful. Keep reading the latest paper, recent papers. Now, the key to a critical literature review, we must be able to demonstrate what you read, understand, and evaluate. We have to be able to evaluate the material that you read. So I'm saying that demonstrate that you have read, understood, and evaluated the material that you have gone through. Right? The Saunders et al. Again. Link different ideas to form a cohesive and coherent argument. That's where most of the authors are very weak. We always say the presentation should be in a good flow, and there should be a logical sequence. And also we have to look after the breadth and depth in the discussion. Okay, for certain topic, the complexity level, based on the complexity level we have to determine the breadth and depth of presentation or discussion that we have. And from one paragraph to another paragraph, the ideas should be flowing. That's what is a cohesive and coherent argument. Sometimes we see one paragraph talking about something, and next paragraph there's no relationship at all. There's no link. Every paragraph should be flowing from one to another. All right, that makes it a systematic or critical literature review. Ideas should be flowing. We have to remember the research is just one piece of work. The whole research report based on one research. So ideas should be flowing. There must be clear linkages between paragraph to paragraph, chapters to chapters. Okay, from the beginning until the end. Like the way we watch a movie. We enjoy a movie when the movie subsequent stages are interrelated, linked from the beginning until the end. So the plot, when it is created in the movie, at the end we see how it is ended. We see the actor is dying, so we cry. Okay. So that comes, it starts from the very beginning, very beginning. So research is like that. That has to be linked. There must be clear linkages from the beginning until the end. That's what we say, the ideas should form a cohesive and coherent argument. And many of us are very weak in that. We have to be careful on that. And when we present a literature review, we have to keep in mind of the research objectives that we have. And also in literature review should provide some kind of linkages of what we are going after this subsequent stages of our research. Now, this is a very important slide. I do explain a lot on this. I'm sure many of the viewers or participants of this research have attended sessions with me. But again, I have to take into account of many new participants, so I have to explain this. The Harvard College Library recommends authors to have the following skills for effective reading. But I explain it in a different way. I would tell the student, basically, you have to read a paper for 4 times. Every paper should be read by 4 times. In a first reading, you will do a previewing. Reading for the sake of reading. Speed reading, I think if you all understand it, speed reading. To see whether the paper is relevant to me, whether the paper is related to me, whether I can get something from this paper. That is the first reading. It may just take you 50, 20 minutes or half an hour, done. That's the first reading. In the first reading, when you scrutinize and screen, and then we feel that it is full, relevant, related to my research, then we go for second reading. The second reading, we call it annotating. What does it mean? We highlight, underline the important statements. We have to remember that a paper could be 20, 30, 40 pages long. Some papers could be 40 pages long, I have read. On average, a social science business paper could be 10 to 15 pages. But even science could be even just 4 pages sometimes. Engineering papers, 4, 5 pages, I have read. But again, if a paper 10 pages long, we are not going to take 10 pages from a paper to my research. No. We may take only a few lines, few statements from a research paper. So that's what we have to annotate. We have to underline or highlight the parts that I feel very important and I would like to take in my research. That's a second reading. So once I finish underlining and highlighting, then I go for third reading. I will summarize now. Summarize your paper. So at the end of the session, towards the end, I'm going to provide you a template, how to summarize a paper to make your life easy. I'm going to show you a template, which is proposed by me. That's the third reading. So once you finish third reading, so one paper is done. You go to the second paper. So when you start reading second paper, you follow the same process, previewing, annotating, summarizing. Read for 3 times. So remember, when you read the second paper, you forgot what you have read in the first paper. So you have to go for another reading. That is fourth reading. That reading will help you to compare and contrast. What are the findings similar and what are the different findings of these 2 papers? So as you go alone, you read third paper, fifth paper, and 10 paper, 20 papers. All papers have to be read by 4 times. We have to read 3 times to summarize the paper. And fourth reading, we will compare and contrast. That's going to help us to do a critical literature review, the last step. And this is very systematic, right? It's a very systematic process. You have 4 steps. So that helps you to do systematic literature review in a way. So 4 steps in it, reading papers for 4 times. I have explained every step, which I'm not going to talk about because I've talked about it. Okay, so this is how is it now. Huh? You have read 50 papers or 100 papers. So many things, so many theories, so many different findings, so many different methodologies. Which one am I going to adopt in my research? All right, so feeling would be like that. I think all of us, we had that feeling. Those of us who have completed PhD, sometimes we feel like it's too heavy to carry on, too heavy to carry on. But we cannot take everything. That's the most important thing. So we have to know to take the important parts from the literature. Okay. Now, when we would like to adopt a critical perspective when we do literature review, this Wallace and Ray has recommended that we have to have the skill to skills. There are 2 skills. The first one is the capacity to evaluate what we did, and the capacity to relate what you did. Very important, right? We have the capacity. We have to have the capacity to evaluate the paper. As I said at the beginning, remember I say I define research as a travel, as a journey. So we pack many things before we travel. And I will always recommend and suggest students, make sure you brush up your language. All papers are English. Make sure your English language is up to the standard so that you can read the paper, understand the paper, evaluate the paper, and can relate the paper to your research. So we have to have that level of English language proficiency. You have to have that. It doesn't matter what software you use, Grammarly, Quillbot, and many other softwares available to help you to, to upgrade your work and all that. But still, the basic work is done by you. The basic is done by you. So your English language, all the papers are written in English. So your English language proficiency must be up to that level. You should be able to evaluate the paper. You should be able to relate the paper to your research. These are the very important skills that are being suggested by Wallace and Ray. The content of critical review, there must be key academic theories in the literature. Many students used to ask me, sir, I cannot find any theories. That's impossible. Theories are there, and you have to know how to relate the theories to your research. That is your failure, that you couldn't relate theories to your research. Theories are there. Theories are there. Then you have to demonstrate the current knowledge of the area. You have to have very clear referencing to the reader, the original cited publication, and we have to acknowledge research of others. I do always say this, by acknowledging others, it doesn't make you smaller. By acknowledging others, actually make you more respected. It's reciprocal. When I respect you, you respect me. When you see I know how to respect people, you will respect me. So this goes to research also. We have to give the credit to the original research authors in the literature review. And that makes you more believable, more trustworthy. People will feel, no, this is a very good literature review. He got a lot of referencing and citation. That is very important. So the content again should include assessment of strength and weaknesses of theories. It's not enough just to show the theory and discuss about it. It should be also, there should be an assessment of strength and weaknesses. There should be a clear understanding of the topic, citing all the key studies, which is very important. Key studies may not be very recent ones. Sometimes could be 1970s, sometimes 80s. Those key papers, still we have to cite them. Okay, a clear indication of how level links to your research questions, a definition of boundaries, the scope, selection and synthesis of existing argument, and through gradual refinement, a clear demarcation of your research problem. So this is how we organize literature review. If it's a PhD thesis, definitely we'll start with the dependent variable. And that's where the problem is. Even my PhD student, there was a student who was doing a study on organizational performance and CSR, CSR and organizational performance. I asked him, what is your study all about? He said, about CSR. So I repeated the question. I said, what is your study all about? He said, CSR. I said, no, what is your dependent variable? Organizational performance. Then I repeat the question again, what is your study about? He says, CSR. So I say, it's not. Your research problem is coming from your dependent variable. So that's the central theme of your research. So literature review should start with your dependent variable. So that's what I observe in many universities when I go as external examiner. I see students explaining all the independent variable first and finally dependent variable. I say that cannot be. It has to start with research problem. First of all, you have to feel unhealthy to see the doctor. Otherwise, you won't go and see the doctor. And once you go to the doctor, then he will say, okay, what is the problem? I have body ache, I have headache, I have, diarrhea, and I have fever. Those are the issues. Those are the independent variable. Okay, so we start with dependent variable, followed by independent variable. And then if you have moderating or mediating, then followed by control variable. So that's how it should be presented. The flow should be like that. But again, I put it on the left in red. We have to ensure good flow and logical sequence in the presentation. So it has to flow from one paragraph to another paragraph, one section to another section. And at the end of literature review chapter or section in a paper, we like to see an excellent summary as a conclusion. Okay, and that's what is research gap, we call it, right? And then we come back to refining research problem. Okay, this is the Hourglass model. I think most of the viewers, participants are very familiar. Whenever we present a report, literature review or discussion chapter, whatever, it should start with general, bit more, right? Specific on comes to methods and results. And then we go back to general, the discussion and conclusion. This is very important. I have to explain a bit here. Students usually will talk about results a lot because this is very simple. We take it from PLA's output or SPSS output, put them in, and in a table we present them. But that is not enough. That is your findings is true, but you got to explain them. You have to discuss them. And then you have to compare with the earlier findings. You have to relate it to the earlier previous findings. You have to relate it to the theory that underpin your theoretical framework. So discussion conclusion should be more. So your general discussion to get into the topic, then we go to specific method results would be not that a lot, but discussion and conclusion should be more and more comprehensive. That makes your literature review stronger. Okay. Now, when we present literature review, I put it as make your voice clear. You are not just presenting other views and arguments. This is what I put at the beginning, some misunderstanding and misconceptions. We just present summarized version of what people have done, but this is not enough. That's not enough. Our perspective, position, standpoint must be clearly stated in the literature review. I read a theory, I reviewed the theory, I reviewed many papers, and based on that, I have to clear my stand because I have my research premise, I have my research context. the country context, the industry context are different. As I said at the beginning, the knowledge is universal, but when it comes to application, is different. It depends on the industry that we are looking into. But again, industry, same industry, different country, again, things could be different. Okay, so when we are reading literature, we have to stand, we have to stand on our feet and say, this is what I understand. And that's how I relate to my research problem. So our own inferences must be there. And your theoretical position is clearly and strongly stated. So that's how we define our construct, our theoretical framework, by having all the constructs there, by showing that this is how the framework is, and this is how am I going to solve the research problem that I have identified. And your language should indicate your assessment of literature, right? Again, it's understandable. When you compare, contrast, and we look at weaknesses and strengths of researches and theories, then we have to state that in a way, so that people understand that I know I have done a good assessment of the literature that I have reviewed. I've given two very simple examples of literature review. One is the weak literature review, as I said. If you read the first sentence to second sentence, there's no linkage. And I proceed to the third sentence, again, there's no linkage. All right, that's what you say is a weak literature review. We just take it from papers and put it there. So what we get, just put it there, copy it and paste it, right? That is not a literature review. So I put it as a weak literature review. It's just a summary from different papers. This is an acceptable one. If I read the first sentence and I proceed to second sentence, there's a clear linkage between the two sentences. And from the first paragraph to the next paragraph, again, there is a clear linkage. Okay, that's what we call an acceptable literature review. There must be clear linkages between sentences and between paragraphs. That's very important. Huh? And then the idea should be flowing from one to another, because each one research is linked together. So that's what we call logical sequence and good flow. It should be flowing from one to another, right? When you watch football game, especially if you watch the UK or Spanish league, you will see how they play. Or even if you watch certain team like Brazil, how they pass on the balls, slow, small passes, and after 50 passes, you will see they score a goal, right? That's the coherent, the kind of thing that we like to cohesive things of type of things that we like to see in research. You're connecting all that small things from here, there, and finally you're scoring a goal, right? Finally, you come out to a conclusion, finding out the research gap. This is another one, also similar, but here it is more critical. We are talking about weaknesses and strengths of papers, talking about what people have argued and what is your argument. So this is more critical. So I've given 3 examples. I wish I could have more time to go about it, but I don't think I have that time. So I would like to skip that. So let me proceed to the next slide. Many participants will always ask me, how many papers should I cite? Should we cite? Personally, I believe to develop good grasp on a topic, you should read at least 40 papers in the area. 40 papers, at least 40 papers. And that might also answer the question of how many papers should I read before I write a PhD research proposal. So I would say about 40 papers. that gives you good grasp, control over the area, and then you can write the research proposal. And for PhD thesis, many students ask me how many papers should I cite in the reference list. We expect 200, and master by research about 100. And 40% of cited papers are expected to be from latest 5 years. I was attending a final Viva Voce yesterday, and there was a complaint from the reviewers, the examiners, that students' work were mostly cited before 5 years. So latest 5 years papers cited are only about 10%. So definitely examiners cannot accept that kind of review and give any major correction to do literature review again. So if you do a very good job, that will be fine. But if there is a problem in literature review, you'll be like that. You read many papers and you tried to, you thought that you have got good control over the area, but again, you can't really proceed. You get deadlock on certain area. In research, is like that. Sometimes the speed will be faster. Outcome will be great, and sometimes you will see suddenly like 2-3 months or few days or few weeks, you are not producing anything, and you start catching your head and see what can I do now. This is very common, so you don't have to be worried about that. Now, let me touch a bit on the theory. PhD or any research that you do, theory is very important. Very important. It's an academic degree. If you talk about PhD, we call it Doctor of Philosophy, right? So it is not Doctor of Management or Doctor of Finance, it's Doctor of Philosophy. We have to understand that very well. There must be some philosophical underpinning, philosophical foundation of your research. And under the purview of philosophy, you will have theories there. Your framework must be guided with the theory. If it is inductive research, it must be guided with the concept. I'll look into that later again. So that's how the theory is being proposed. It comes with the theory, idea. It comes all from idea. And then concept, we go to construct. And then from there, we propose a hypothesis. And then when we test it, and then we propose a theory. This is a very common one. And this is how I presented it. It is ideas with the theory, then concept, then construct, then proposition, and theory. All theories will have, all theories do have assumptions, prepositions, and what we call hypothesis, all right? So when we try to relate theories to our research, we have to make sure that my research problem, the assumption that I have, somehow conforms to the theory that I plan to take. And also, another area, many times students do mistake on selection of theory. Many theories are organization level theory, and many are individual level theory. If your unit of analysis is individual, by right, we should be selecting individual level theory. If your unit of analysis is organization, then the theory should be organization level theory. We shouldn't do a mistake on that. If you get a bit critical examiner, a bit naughty examiner, you will be dealt through and will be caught for selecting or taking wrong theories for the premise of research that you have. So this is another way we got to look at the approaches used in critical literature review. First one is deductive and other one is inductive. Deductive is from the theoretical framework, conceptual framework develops based on the theory and hypothesis, then we collect data and test them, right? That's a deductive. From the existing knowledge that we have, from the existing theory that we have. But inductive is different. We start from a zero, from ideas, and then concept, and finally we test it and propose a theory. That is inductive. I compare with this analogy, this one. This is deductive, right? Theory to hypothesis, we collect data and we accept reject hypothesis. This is deductive. So this is how I compare with this analogy. You are landed with a beautiful piece of land and you see a beautiful garden, and then you pick up the flowers that you like. Okay, so this is deductive research. You have theories and all those factors, variables identified. You pick up the variable that you feel relevant to your research problem. So if I go in this garden or you go in this garden, you are not going to take all these flowers. I may choose few, and your selection of flowers could be different from me, right? It's because of my background. I have different tastes and preferences. You have different tastes and preferences. So sometimes theories could be similar, but yet the variables that you choose could be different because our industry context is different. The premise is different. Okay, so this is deductive approach. You have everything there, the theories are there, variables are there, you choose them, then you collect data, you test them. This is deductive research. This is inductive research. We observe phenomena, we analyze the pattern or theme, we formulate relationship, we develop a theory. This is inductive. It's more on a qualitative. So in-depth interview, focus group, projective techniques, content analysis. There are many, right? Many. kind of methods are available there. And this is how I show it. The analogy is like that. You are landed on a piece of land, nothing there. You plow the land, you harvest the land, you plant the tree, you water the tree, you give the soil to the fertilizer, the tree, you fertilize the tree, right? And then you water the tree, and finally you get the garden. The garden, the kind of garden that you like to have. This is inductive. This is inductive. I compare these two analogies so that participants can understand it easily. Okay, so this is inductive. We start from zero, and finally we come out with what I want. But deductive is something is already there. Something is already there. From there I select. Okay, and I test and see whether those are useful, relevant to me. Okay. All right. This is the phases in a systematic literature review. Uh, sorry. My car suddenly having the problem. Is all right. Sorry for the problem. Okay. So phases in systematic literature review. We have a few phases. Phase one, we have to develop the review protocol, and under that I put a few stages there. We have to specify research question, develop review protocol, validate the review protocol. And then second phase, we conduct the review whereby we identify relevant research. We select primary studies, we assess the study quality, we extract required data, and then we synthesize the data. And phase three will be documenting the review by writing the review report, and then we validate the report. Okay. This is not very different from what Saunders has proposed, right? Which I have explained earlier. These three phases are very common to conduct a systematic literature review. I think many researchers or authors are very poor in the first stage, developing review protocols. And I compare this with the packing of luggage before you travel. Okay. When you start traveling and suddenly you realize that you did not bring your handphone, how would you feel? Or the midway you realize you did not bring your wallet or purse, how would you feel? So this is review protocol, very important. You have to develop the review protocol. You have to prepare the luggage before you are on board for a journey. Okay, this is phase one, and phase two, phase three. This is another way of showing how systematic literature review can be done. It can be divided into three stages. Stage one, we plan for the review. Stage two, we conduct review, and stage three, we report and disseminate. So quite similar to the earlier one, but again, a bit different way of presenting it. Okay, so I'm not going to explain a lot on it. This is a slide that I love to show. This is the kind of world we are in now, right? We sit together, but we do not really communicate. We are always on the social platform, be it in the school or restaurant or in the house, or even in the house. You can see the third picture on the left, the second picture, you can see the grandmother is presenting foods, but everybody busy with the headphones. So we are so busy with all these platforms. It has a lot of implications for researchers. The paper that is published today is being read by researchers. Those are really into the field. And many times I do get complaint from students after the final viva voce or proposal defense session. They'll come and complain to me saying that, sir, I think the examiner has not been reading papers for 5 years. Or he may not have read paper last 2-3 years, or even 1 year. Students who are doing conducting research, especially PhD or postdoctoral scholars, they try to get the paper as soon as possible. So supervisors, sometimes we may be busy with some other things, so we may not be able. But again, we have to keep in mind that the updated recent knowledge can be obtained too soon by people because of all the medias available to us. And this is a slide that I always show now also. The future job trends. We argue that 60% of the current jobs will be unavailable in the future. 65%, 65%. 65% of current job will not be there in near future. So there are many new areas are coming in. So when you are conducting a research, selecting a topic, please keep that in mind. We know how Uber and many other platforms, apps have changed the life forever. The fintech, the blockchain, the cloud computing, those are changing our lives completely. So when we are thinking and deciding on a research topic, we have to make sure that it's relevant in coming years, because that's the research work you do, and you will keep that for your academic progression and all that. So we do not want to do a research that's going to be obsolete. So we have to do a research on an updated area. So please keep that in mind when you select a topic to do your research. This is my last element of a discussion. All right, this is the last one. This is the template that I have developed, and it seems like appreciated by researchers worldwide. This is a very simple template. I am showing how can you summarize one research paper into one page, one single page. A 40 pages long paper can be summarized into a single page. And I have given 7 boxes there. When you read paper, we have to identify what research problem they have focused on. Then previous research findings, listing the variables or factors, the theories they use, the hypotheses they have tested, the data sources and collection methods, the methods of analysis, the findings of this current research, and suggestion for future research. If you can get all this information from reading a paper, then it is done. Everything is there. Annotating and summarizing, right? We say 3 steps: reviewing, annotating, summarizing. This is summary of a research paper. Let me show you some example how we have done it. This is a paper about 16 pages long, and you can see that I have summarized into one single page. I put the title in the middle, and I keep the reference at the bottom, and I have identified his research problem, previous findings, the variables identified, the data sources, the analysis method used, the findings, and further research suggestions I've identified. I have put that in one template. So this is 40 pages long paper, could be summarized into one single page. This is another one, 25 pages long paper. This paper is 25 pages long. Okay, and you can see it's being summarized in one single page. And I have more examples of papers just to show you. Actually, this template could be very effective, very useful for you to summarize one single page, right? I said, when you read a paper, you don't take everything. You only take ideas, right? Few sentences from the paper. And this is another example. I have given here a 10 summary. And what I do practically, when I supervise my PhD student, I'll tell them, okay, you read 10 papers, summarize into 10 pages. And after he has 10 pages of summary, I will ask him to combine the 10 pages into one single page. So the slide you are seeing now is a summary of 10 articles. So 10 articles is being summarized into one single page. So this is the first cycle. I will meet his students and argue with him. I will ask him to present, and then we argue. And then after that, I will ask him to read another 10 paper. He will summarize it to one single page. Then we'll debate. Then I'll ask him to go for 3rd round and 4th round. Once he finishes 4th round, he will have 4 single page, every page having 10 paper summary. Then I will ask him to combine 4 single pages into one single page. 4 single page having 10 papers each, right? So that 4 single pages he will combine into one page, meaning that 40 research papers would be summarized into one single page. It's amazing. If you can do that, and you just sit down, on your chair and look at it, you'll be just shocked to see how beautiful it is. 40 papers into a one single page. All right. So I think that's the end of my presentation for today. I have taken almost 1.5 hours. So I would like to pass the session to Dr. Faizan. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Amin. It was really interesting, and I was monitoring the comments along the way. So I just want to say thank you to you first, you have given a lot of time and a lot of knowledge. But at the same time, I want to thank everybody who was online and they were watching the whole stream. There were quite a few people who actually stayed the whole stream. And then many people thanked you uh, for sharing all that you have shared. I also had a few people commenting that they are watching the live session with their students at the same time, which is again a good point. And I want to clarify that the whole point of doing these sessions is to provide people access to knowledge and these type of wonderful scholars and the skills, so to improve the skills for research. So what we will do is, because it's already 1.5 hours, I'll pick up a few questions from the comments that people have just commented, and then maybe you can just very quickly comment on those questions, right? And the questions will be pinned on the screen for others to see as well. So this is one question, which is it mandatory to invent the new thing through research, or it's just an amendment in existing knowledge?
I think in social science or business research, we do not really invent something new. Most of the time, we validate, we verify, we amend, or we extend the current theories that we have. But there are certain groundbreaking research whereby we do invent new things also. Right? But again, if you are just doing what people are doing, then it is not a research. You have to have something new. That may not be an invention, it's just an extension. We can validate theory, we can verify theory, we can nullify theory, we can extend theory, we can integrate theories. Those are also new things that what we expect from a research.
Mhm. All right, thank you very much, Professor. I mean, the other question is from Mohammad Rashid Karim. He says reviewing research paper is boring and tough to keep patience to complete a paper. How to make it interesting?
It's a very good question. I think I'm giving you a template that will make you a bit you feel easy. Um, Once you develop some kind of control over the area, if you understand research problem very well by reading papers, so as you go on, if you read more and more papers, you will feel more excited. You will get the interest in it. The problem is when we read a few papers and we try to give up, and we feel like it's very boring. That kind of mentality is not that good. It's not good. Once you start reading, it definitely is boring. Reading paper is not good. But once you get into the area, you will feel excited to read more and more. So it's one area.
Yeah. Um, I I also want to add here. I exactly, I agree to what you said, but also at the same time, when you are starting research, like let's say there's a PhD student or even a master student starting to get into research, first year, first semester, maybe you just don't have the skill set to read the entire paper, right? Because maybe you're not very okay with statistics or methodology or whatever. So the template that Professor Amin provided is a very good template actually to make it very interesting, because you don't have to read the whole paper, you just skim through the paper. And I don't think it's very productive for anybody to read like a whole paper, because I know when I started my PhD, it took me at least 4 times reading one paper to at least understand what's going on in that paper. It's just because it's not normal English, it's not like a magazine or anything. It's difficult and it's very concise and comprehensive. So the template is very interesting, and I think skimming through the paper and extracting the information, putting it into that template would really make it interesting to many people. Because people who are visual, the template provides a very good visual cue. People who are kinesthetic, hands-on, it also gives you hands-on exercise to take out information and put it into that template. So a very interesting template. Let's go to another question, Professor. It's from Pradeep Kumar. In what case the need of SLR arises, or in other words, what exactly the SLR solves or provides
I think the whole
solutions?
presentation clarifies this question, right? ACLR provides you a lot of things, so we talk about it in many slides. It provides you updated knowledge of what has been done, what has not been done, the kind of research method you should be adopting, because research methods are different for different contexts and different premise. It also ACLR guides you on the theories that could be relevant and useful for you. the methods of analysis are being used before that provide subsequent, the guidelines for you to conduct subsequent stages of research. So the need for ASLR is very indispensable and very clear. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So this one says, what should we read first for literature review? PhD thesis, articles, books. Of course, we have no time. Read all the pages. Where should we
If you are doing a
focusing?
PhD research, I always recommend obtain one full PhD thesis. Just preview it and get a feeling of how a PhD thesis looks like. I think that should be the first thing that you should do. And then after that, you should start reading research papers. It's not about book. It's not book. It's not book. A book is just one person ideas, and those ideas are not tested. So you have to focus on more on research papers. Research papers are based on many people's views, and ideas are contested, ideas are tested, pre-tested, post-tested, and all sort of things being done. So you should focus more on research papers, definitely.
Okay. Then I see that quite a few people ask about the PPT slides, and Professor Amin was gracious to say that he would share the slides. So once I get them, I'll put them into a cloud folder and share the link in the video description. So maybe just check it after an hour or so, and then we'll have it there. Okay, I'll take another maybe 2 or 3 questions, and then we can end the session. Another question is from Mohammed Osama Sardar. Can you elaborate the hourglass model, specifically why methods and results should be given less focus?
I compare with when you are unhealthy and meeting with the doctors, right? When you meet the doctor will start asking questions, and that is longer. What happened 10 years before, your family background, even your father or mother has this kind of problem or not. These are the general discussion. So that's the introductory session that the doctors will do. And after that, he will just go for a test. Test doesn't take very long time. And the result is just presented in one piece of paper. But later, the discussion, the prescription is longer. So you may have to take the medication for 2-3 months or even sometimes years. So that is discussion. So discussion got to be longer. Results can be presented in a simple tabular format. But the discussion, that's where actually most of the authors are very weak. They just present the results and they fail to discuss and relate it to the theory and previous research. And that's why the hourglass theory, the model has showed it that way. General discussion should be more, your results should be less, but discussion should be more. That's the perspective.
Okay, thank you. Another question is from Muhammad. Muhammad, what is the relationship between literature review and the main
the
research
relationship is
question?
very clear. The literature review should be guided by research questions, because your research problem is broken down into research questions. So when you do literature review, it should be guided by research questions. That's what we miss sometimes, because at the end you want to find the research gap, and that research gap will define your research problem, and research problem being broken down into research questions. So definitely these all are interconnected. So research review should be guided with research questions.
Okay, thank you. Well, does the literature review have to be in chronological order? This one I get also.
I think this
all
one
the
Dr.
time.
Faizan Ali can answer, if you don't mind. It should be fine.
Yeah, I mean, normally I would say that there's no need. I mean, when you are making a list or any sort of record for your literature, then you can put it chronologically. But when you write your literature review, it doesn't have to be chronological. In fact, it shouldn't be chronological because earlier somebody asked a question that reading paper is boring. And if you really put literature review chronological, it becomes extremely boring. We always, at least I know that I always ask my students to write their papers as a story. And when you say story does not always go chronologically. You have to go back and forth, back and forth. Because if you think of any good paper that you have read, you would see that the literature talks about one viewpoint, then another one criticizing this one, and then the favorers and opposers. So it always does not happen chronologically. So I don't think it's a good idea to do it in that order. Okay, I'll take two more questions, Professor. I see that there's a lot of questions coming towards the end, but I don't know because we have
No, I got no issues.
time
If
is,
you are okay, we can handle a few more questions.
Okay. Okay, all right. Thank you so much. So another question is from Osama Sardar. What is your suggestion for a topic for which there's a lot of research already from the industry, but the topic is still open for future challenges?
Yeah, I think the
Should
answer
we
is
go
very
for it?
clear, definitely, because if future is still future relations is still there on the topic, you should be going, you should be undertaking research. Very clear. If you find a topic that doesn't have any application in the future, you should not go with that topic. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. This one is a good question. It says, is systematic review same as meta-analysis, especially when you are summarizing?
This is a beautiful question. Meta-analysis is something totally different, right, Dr. Faizan? Meta-analysis is totally different.
Yes.
Literature review, you are reviewing literature, and then you are basically describing or elaborating them with the help of theories. You are looking at weaknesses and strengths of theories and all that. You are presenting it in a good flow and logical sequence. That is literature review. But meta-analysis is different. Meta-analysis, you get into the similar kind of papers. Sometimes you choose also similar kind of journals, and then we compare the papers and we finally arrive at a conclusion. So they are not the same thing, but they are different
Mhm.
things.
Right. I would just say that because it's not the topic, but meta-analysis, in my opinion, is the quantitative version of qualitative literature review. Because in meta-analysis, you basically do analysis of all the relationships in your literature review. So you have to look at the effect sizes and you have to include. So normally, when you do literature review, just as an example, when you are writing your hypothesis development, you say that according to XYZ, variable A impacts variable B, according to ABC, variable X impacts variable Y. That's what we do in hypothesis development. It's a normal qualitative literature review. But when we do meta-analysis, you have to record everything, and then you have to test the relationships to sort of summarize the current state of literature on particular relationships. Okay, and let's say there was another one. There's so many comments. So, okay. Please inform. Can I take a relevant article to my topic as theory for my individual research? Is it obligatory that theory have to be popular or well accepted?
Um, I think theory doesn't have to be popular. The theory got to be relevant. Theory got to be relevant. So it
Mhm.
depends on the kind of research problem that we are focusing on, and then we have to find the relevant theory. Sometimes a theory seems to be not relevant, but not related. But as we go in the deeper of the theory, look at the assumptions of the theory, we might see the relevance of the theory. So,
Okay.
Dr. Faizan, usually I speak less, so I will answer very short. I'm not like a person who talks a lot.
Yeah, no, no, it's okay. It's completely fine.
I think the viewers, participants would be all right with the short answers. I don't
Yeah,
speak. I will not
it's
answer.
okay. Yes, yes, it's completely fine. As far as it answers the question, even if it's to the point, then it's completely fine. Um, One thing I want to say here is that the first part of the question that says, can I take a relevant article to my topic as a theory for my individual research? I don't think, I think it's a support for what you want to do. It's a support because it's literature, but you cannot call any published paper as a theory. A theory has to be a theory. And earlier, Professor Amin was talking about inductive and deductive approach, and very beautiful examples of the garden and everything. So if I say a theory, let's say if I recently published a paper about experience, right, tourist experience or whatever, it's published paper, it's a deductive paper. So I cannot take my paper as a theory for another paper. My paper is a support for what I might say in my new paper, but it's not a theory. The theory would always come from inductive approach through a proper rigorous method, the theory development method. It has to go through that to call it a theory. And that's the difference between, let's say, theory of planned behavior versus Ali et al. 2015. So you have to understand the difference between published papers versus theories. And it's also okay that sometimes theories are published papers. So, but okay, one last question we can take, and this question was from one person who actually posted this question 3 or 4 times. Uh, okay, the question is, how can I register my systematic literature review protocol?
Okay. I think I have given you the phases of literature review. Where with the first phase, I think you have to have the protocol of your research. And I compared that with the analogy of packing your luggages before we travel, right? So protocol has to be there. So when you talk about protocol, then you can still go back to Saunders' model of reviewing process. So you are identifying the parameters of research, the keywords, you are searching for it, the finding out the right kind of papers or journals that you would like to use. Those are the protocols that we use, identifying the right parameters, the keywords, and all that. That will help to develop the protocol of searching or reviewing literature.
Right.
Dr. Fazan, if you'd like to add on, you are most welcome.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. It's very good. I would just say that I have done one video on my channel that says finding and managing your ideas through mind maps, concept maps, and some other tools. So I would suggest to look into that because I very detailed, in a very detailed manner, I have explained how do you do the protocol and how do you search for literature smartly. So we can do that. I just want to comment very quickly on one question because this person actually said that I want to clarify my last question. It was more about the big tech companies may possibly achieve the goal before us, even before we are deep into the topic, how to evaluate such risks. So I just want to quickly comment on this, and that is we need to understand the difference between different type of research. As researchers, it's very, very important that we understand this. And I normally give an example to my students and other people that I talk to by asking them a question. And the question is hammer a good tool or a bad tool? And then people are sort of confused, right? Like, what do I answer about that? If you want to put a nail into a wall, hammer is a very good tool. But if you want to bang your own finger with a hammer, it's not a good tool at all. So we need to understand this difference. And the research that we do as researchers, we are doing theoretical research. We want to advance the knowledge about a certain area. Sometimes research that big companies are doing is a very different way of looking at research. That's very applied research. So two different types of research. And normally, I do not think that when we, as PhD students or supervisors, ask our students to do research, to ask them about practical contributions, because we cannot do that. What we can ask students is, what is the practical implication of your study? And implication and contribution are two different things, very, very different things, right? As PhD students, as academic researchers, our main job is to make theoretical contribution, to advance the theory, right? Why is something happening? Not really to advance the industry. Now, industry can pick up things from theoretical research, and that's what industry does all the time, right? So that's two different things. It's not always that the industry do things before theoretical research. It's not always like this. Like, there's a misconception that academic researchers are very slow and they do things very slow and industry is way ahead. Yes, many times it happens, but not all the times. And a good example of that would be COVID-19. So right now, COVID-19 has a lot of academic literature about how is it impacting financially people, how is it impacting psychologically and all that. But the main thing is the vaccine, which is basically industry related thing. It's not out yet. So industry is not ahead of theoretical research in this particular scenario, and there's many other scenarios where we can look into that. So it's for us, and then this question says may possibly achieve the goal. So going back to my answer, the goal is very different for us as theoretical researchers, academic researchers, and practical industry applied research. So the goal is very different. So I don't think it's like a race who gets it first. It's just complementing each other. Yeah, that would be my answer. I don't know, Professor Amin, if you want to add anything to this.
I think it clarifies the question. It's fine.
All right. So thank you so much. I think it was 1 hour 45 minutes, a lot of interesting discussion. But mainly, I want to thank you, Professor Amin, for sharing your knowledge and being very kind enough to agree to share the PowerPoint slides as well. And I'm very sure that's going to help a lot of people. Thank you again.
You're most welcome.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody who joined. Okay, you have a good day, stay safe, and may God bless you all.